I thought the best stewardship moment coming out of the pews was when Henry Poehler got up and said, "First, I want you to remember there are no roof racks on a hearse." I think he meant that to be funny. But these two sisters of ours have said something really very wonderful. It couldn't be said better by Joan and Joy, so I appreciate that very much. I almost feel like we should just go downstairs and eat. But no, I worked on this sermon, so you're going to have to listen to it. The scripture for this sermon is from the Gospel according to Mark, and it's printed on the song sheet today. This is the Message translation from Mark 12, beginning at verse 38. Jesus continued teaching. "Watch out for the religion scholars, the scribes. They love to walk around in academic gowns, preening in the radiance of public flattery, basking in the prominent positions, sitting at the head table at every church function, and all the time they are exploiting the weak and the helpless. The longer their prayers, the worse they get, but they'll pay for it in the end." Sitting across from the offering box, he was observing how the crowd tossed money in for the collection. Many of the rich were making large contributions. One poor widow came up and put in 2 small coins, a measly 2 cents. Jesus called his disciples over and said, "The truth is that this poor widow gave more to the collection than all the others put together. All the others gave what they'll never miss. She gave extravagantly what she couldn't afford. She gave her all." There was a report in Newsweek magazine, an article which I had saved. It took place right at the end of the 1990s. And the report said there is emerging in America an elitist group known as the overclass. They are, for the most part, graduates of prestigious schools. These front runners are young, smart, rich, manipulative, energetic, tireless workers who embrace the ideology of merit. The word failure is not in their vocabulary. They establish self-defined parameters. Their lifestyles are distinctive and expensive. Their children go to the best private schools. The overclass help to perpetuate a 2-tier society. Although they avoid mixing with other classes and individuals as much as possible, they do reach out to those in power, those who can foster their objectives. The Newsweek carried this elaborate story, and it was complete with the names, the pictures, and the employers of the top 100 American elite. They are among the country's comers, the newest wave of important and compelling people. I didn't see any of our names on the list. Important and compelling people. There was a time in your life, in the idealistic period of your life, when you wanted to be an important and a compelling person, I think. Most of us do. The elite, we saw clearly in the current economic mess, didn't we? When we heard about the salaries and the bonuses that were being handed out, and if we ever said to ourselves, "Oh, America's a classless society, you know, there are no real elite," or there are few, but then we found out that people making an awful lot of money in some of these corporations, and the company may in fact be failing, and they're still one of these. They are still important and compelling people, compelling a lot of money at least. The pension funds, which we middle class depend upon, may have been hit hard, and they still got bonuses. But the elite soldier on, pockets bulging. You see, the system works just fine for them. The system works just fine for them. I say all this because it's a parallel to today's gospel. Jesus talks about the important and the compelling people of his time. And he uses the scribes, the scholars of the religious laws, those people who are supposed to guide people in living out God's way. When people want to know about how to deal with tough situations, they go to these scholars, and these scholars advise them. They didn't call it pastoral counseling in those days, but that's really what it was. And so when they taught in the synagogues, they were supposed to teach people how to live when times are tough. We belong to God, the song said. When we are giving, when we are feeding, we belong to God. That's what they were supposed to say. But they weren't saying it. I remember early on in my studies when I became a church person and felt that the church was going to be very important in my life. I took a Bible study called the Bethel Bible Study. And one of the first questions that somebody in the study asked the pastor was, well, why did Jesus have to come? In Genesis 3, we are told, God says to Abraham, I will make you a blessing, and by you all the nations of the world will bless themselves. And the pastor said, but you see, the people had lost their way. They were blessing themselves. They weren't blessing the nations of the world. And so therefore God sent Jesus into the world. Well, the scribes were doing it then, and not telling people to be just and compassionate. In fact, we are told they were lording it over the people. But these highly respected religious guys had turned their temple community also into something which oppressed people. It made a lot of demands on people without much of the grace of God being handed out. So the elite scholar scribes were doing just fine, but they did not notice the needs of the people. Every time I've read this story, I think it's kind of funny. We don't do the offering this way. The person next to you, I guess, notices what you're putting in the plate, but we have this discreet way of handling what we give because we give out envelopes, So there could be anything in that envelope. There could be $1, there could be $1,000, and nobody would know. And so we put everything in envelopes, It'd be funny if, I remember Earl could back this up if he didn't have to leave for his other job. In a black church, some of my friends have visited, they say they count the offering right away, They're singing hymns during the offering. Somebody's back here counting the offering, and they give the sign like this or like this. And if the sign goes like this, they go back around again. Wasn't enough. You laugh at that, don't you? Boy, I can't tell you how many times people have been tempted to say, well, let's go around again here. The Bible talks about 900 times about money. Nowhere near that many times about, for instance, human sexuality, which is a real hot issue in the church, real hot. Or prayer. Many, many more times the talk is about money. And in the church, we've flipped that completely over. It's like talking about sexuality is more comfortable to us than talking about money. But Jesus talks about money. And not only that, he goes and sits next to where they take the offering. I always thought that was kind of funny, wasn't it? I mean, it'd be like him following the ushers down the aisle here to see. Oh, let's see. How did Neil and Ann do this morning? That kind of thing.